Grand from Practical Farmers of Iowa. Hope you're having a great night wherever you're at, and thank you very much for joining us. Please put your email and city and state in the chat box. That way we can see where folks are coming from. Looks like we have a Canadian again in the audience. Nice to have you with us, Jake, our friend from across the border to the north. Very fitting for to have international participants in our Farminar series in this Winter Olympics time. Thanks for joining us. We've got our third Farminar in our series going on right now, growing better potatoes and carrots on a few acres. Please join us each week through March 11th for new Farminars with farmers as the experts. Making niche pork work for you at any scale is next week, so consider that, as well as really interesting topic, pesticide drift, our horticultural farmers' #1 priority for 2014, dealing with pesticide drift concerns. Thanks for joining us. Let me tell you a little bit about this wonderful organization, Practical Farmers, that brings you this Farminar series tonight. The members of Practical Farmers of Iowa, now more than 2,500 individuals, value common things and want to share those values with you tonight. Perhaps you'll see some of these on your short list of core values as well. Ingenuity, exploration, experience, sharing knowledge. We really believe that we all do better by sharing what we know and helping each other out along our way. We value diverse, independent farm operations that work within the Earth's ecosystems, fit within our limits. We value an agriculture that's economically and ecologically sustainable, built on a fair market system, with beginning farmers accessing land, as well as folks of all experience levels and ages, and different just widespread ownership in general, really important to us. We're committed to our families, our communities, and the celebration of wholesome food, growing it, eating it, enjoying it, sharing it with our neighbors and our friends. But we believe in growing more than crops. We believe in growing people. That's a really important part of our organization, that we want to help farmers learn from each other, share what they know, gain confidence, and improve their lives through on-farm research or demonstration projects, as well as wonderful events like the 130 events we did last year that feature farmers as the experts, just like our Farminar series. We have all kinds of farmers, and you find that each Farminar you'll find a new farm with a new angle of growing crops and marketing crops and livestock. Here's one that's an interesting cutting edge farm from near Panora, Iowa, early morning harvest. This is Jeff Hafner. So if you share those common values, if you're interested in farm exploration and improving your farm and life, please join as a member of Practical Farmers. Just $20 a year for students, $50 gives you a whole farm membership. This is renewed every 12 months, so it's just a $50 per year cost. And definitely a great value. You get our Practical Farmer newsletter delivered to your mailbox, as well as a bunch of other benefits that we can list on our website. If you want to look more information at practicalfarmers.org/join, that'll be a great place for you to consider joining as a member. One of the other benefits we offer folks who are members and who are not members is our website. We have a lot of great events posted on our website, from events that we do, as well as partner organizations across the Midwest. So this is a great calendar that keeps you in the loop with different things going on all across the Midwest. Still celebrating our annual conference turnout. We had like a 30% increase in attendance over last year's record of 650 people, so wonderful turnout from beginners and experienced farmers alike. Folks said that it was just very well organized, great networking opportunity, a real excellent value for their money. So keep in mind, each annual conference is in January, at the end of January, so we'll have another one in 2015. If you want to be get more information about that, the best way to do that is to become a member of Practical Farmers. If you're looking for a little more experience before you start your own farm, maybe you've got your own farm already and also want some more experience as well as you ramp up production, consider the Labor for Learning program as an optimal place to spend a summer learning from a farmer who wants to train you above and beyond what you typically get trained in as a farm laborer. You know, they want to share with you the intimate details about how their farm is financed, how it makes a profit, really kind of share with you everything you need to be successful on your own farm. And we've got 11 selected trainers that applied and were approved by a farmer board committee, excuse me. And please check out those farms at the link below. or practicalfarmers.org, and you can just look at the Labor for Learning link on the homepage. Great way to get more experience on the job, get paid to work for a farmer, and improve your skills. All right, that's enough out of me. Let's take it over to Jason Jones and his slides, and we'll also bring in Noah from Driftless Organics as well. Jason, if you want to turn on your microphone, I'll pull up your slides, and we can begin.
Great, thanks, Luke. Okay, so my name's Jason Jones. This is actually the second Farminar that I've had the privilege of doing with PFI. The first one I did a couple years ago, and that one had to do with figuring out how to finance a new farm. A little bit about me: I spent the last 8 or so years working on a small fruit and vegetable CSA here in central Iowa, and then as of last year I left that job with the intention of starting my own farm. I kind of started the farm before that with just selling things here and there, but nothing too serious. So what I'm looking to do is create a small scale, hopefully someday a family farm that the most important things to me are that the farm is ecologically and financially sustainable. Without those two things, I don't think a farm can really exist. So what I did this year is went out and found some land to rent, and luckily through some other farmers and through a connection from them, I found my landlords. The farm that they own, or the land that they own, is just south of Cambridge, Iowa. It's about a 40-some acre parcel of land. They don't do much farming on it. They just kind of use the ground for pasture for some animals that they have. They're really committed to making sure that the land is used in a fashion that are in accordance with their values. They're not interested in having it farmed conventionally. It's really good ground, so they could easily rent it out to the highest bidder if they so choose. But what they have made as one of their goals is to keep it organic or chemical free. So I entered into a lease agreement with them, a year-to-year lease agreement to rent 7 acres of their ground to start growing what will hopefully become Wilted Leaf Farm. My interest is really in growing greens and lettuces, things like that, and I have other crops that I want to grow as well. I hope to focus mostly on greens and lettuces, but since most of the markets that I'll sell to at the beginning will be farmers markets, the Iowa Food Cooperative, maybe some restaurants here and there, but it's hard to have, in my opinion, I think it's probably hard to have a market stand that just sells greens and lettuces. So, I want to try and round that out with some other crops, but also looking to focus on storage crops for the ends of the season. My main goal is to be able to produce normally throughout the main part of the growing season, but really try to hit on the edges of the season. So there in that picture you can see the area that I'm using. Since I'm just starting out this year by myself, I certainly won't go the full length of that distance. I'm still kind of deciding how far I can actually go doing it on my own, but that's kind of what this year is about, is figuring some of that stuff out. Let's see. My crop system is pretty simple, 50 by 200 foot field sections. Right now my goal is to set up a 7-year rotation for each of the crops that I plan to grow. my goal is to really use as much cover cropping as I can. I've learned that sometimes can be a little bit easier said than done, but I believe full and well the important use of cover crops on farms. So I'm committed to trying to use it as much as I possibly can at every possible moment. There are some animals on this property, not enough to sustain even a 7-acre farm. So I'm looking at ways to integrate compost into the operation. My goal is to use it consistently for the long term and to use as much of it as I can. I think, from what I understand about compost, there's not much better that you could put into the ground to get the things that you want out of it. So, and for me, building soils is just as important as growing crops. If you're building good soils, you're likely growing good crops as well. So there, to the right of the picture, you can kind of see the projects that I've been working on over this last part of the fall. Since my intention is to try and really hit those edges of the seasons, my intention is to put up, well, I have already put up a movable high tunnel, a 50-foot long tunnel that'll move in 2 positions. There you can kind of see them outlined. And then there's another white outline in the northwest corner of the picture that shows where my processing shed will go. So I think the high tunnel is an important part of it as well, to be able to take advantage of those ends of the seasons. And then, my field plots will likely run continuously along that track in that fashion. So basically, what I'm looking at for equipment right now, I've got a couple of tractors. In the picture there you can see the Farmall A. I hope to mount that cultivator to that tractor and use that as my main mode of weed control, quote-unquote control. And I also have another larger tractor that I'll use for other things on the farm. It's a narrow front tractor, so it doesn't work quite well for a lot of different things. And then BCS walking tractor. Still quite a bit of equipment that I'm looking to purchase. Just looking for the right thing. Tractor, plow, tiller, some type of mower, and then potentially some type of seed drill as well. From the work that I've done with cover crops over the years, I've had hit or miss success with certain ones. I think the ability to use a piece of machine to put that seed in the ground at the right depth and in a uniform way and protect it from birds is a useful it's a useful tool to be able to do that. I think you can get better stands with cover crops if you have a way to get them into the ground a little bit more uniformly. So and hopefully through this Farminar, Noah will be able to kind of give us some ideas about what we're thinking about for equipment and whether or not it makes sense. I think that's pretty much it for the overview. Are there any questions about my operation and what I'm looking to do?
Feel free to put in questions now, and we'll also take questions throughout too. So if there aren't any at this moment, we'll transition to Noah, and maybe Noah has some questions for you, Jason. Get ready.
Yep. Okay.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My name's Noah Engel. You guys still hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Feels kind of quiet. Okay. Yeah, I guess just let me know if you can't hear me.
I had the same thing.
Yeah,
Though. It
yeah.
feels like you're talking to yourself.
Okay, good. That's encouraging. Okay. And so, yeah, unfortunately I didn't put my photographs in any specific order, so I guess we'll just kind of have to go with that. But yeah, so I can tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up dairy farming with my family in southwestern Wisconsin, and when me and my brother were, let's see, I have an older brother and a little brother and a little sister, and my parents, when me and my brother were, I don't know, 10 years old or something, they were like, you guys really ought to do something. You have a summer project, baling hay and ranking hay and milking and everything else wasn't enough to do. So they got us going. My mom got us going on growing potatoes, and we did a 1/4 acre our first year in 1994, and called ourselves Rainbow Potatoes. So grew lots of different varieties, and we stuck with that for a long time, and did other things on the side. We grew a little calendula for a little while, and winter squash and whatever, and we were going to school and high school and whatever, and then I also worked at a couple of other farms after I got out of high school. Never went to college, but did like internship or work experience type things, and so that's kind of my background, and so yeah, so potatoes something we stuck with, so then in like 2005 we started Driftless Organics as a partnership with me and my brother, and then we brought in a co-owner, another partner, Mike Lind, who's been just awesome. He's the reason we have a website, and the reason we have photographs tonight. So he really keeps all that stuff going and keeps CSA signups going. So we're growing on. We have a lot of land available to us. Not all of it's really well suited for vegetables. It's a retired dairy farm, so we've carved out about 50 of the flattest acres on that farm, and then we lease another 30 or 40, just to have, as Jason was saying earlier, enough land to be in cover crop and soil building and de-weeding and different types of, more passive controls for weeds and pests that come up in organic cropping systems. So yeah, a goal to plant about between 40 and 50 acres of vegetables every year. For right now, is a comfortable amount. So yeah, with the partnership, I'm going to do my best to answer everyone's questions tonight. Some areas are not my particular area on the farm. We delegate a lot out between me and my brother and Mike. So my really strong points are field preparation and equipment sourcing and readying and execution in the field. But yeah, so feel free to ask anything, and I'll do my best to get all any questions answered or explain things or so. Yeah, I see there looks like Luke found an overview of our farm. It's a ridgetop farm, so as you get further away from the center of each of those yellow areas, it gets steeper and steeper. So those are kind of the flattest acres. It's about 360 acre farm, and those are the flattest acres right there. So and yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much where we are. So yeah, I don't know if we want to.
Yep, let's
How
have
many
Jason. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
How many employees does it take to do that 50 to 80 acres?
It takes, during the summer we have about 12 people, 12 to 15 people on, plus I have kind of all these extraneous people too. Like we have a retired farmer that does like large field work for us. Like he'll go and dig like prep fields for cover crops and then do a lot of the cover crop seeding, or he's available for some bigger projects. So our other tractor operators that are busy cultivating and doing stuff like in this photograph here that's kind of tedious and time consuming can focus on that. And then bookkeeper that's part-time, and a few different part-time people, a mechanic guy that comes in once in a while to sort of tie up loose ends. So but yeah, main crew. And then we're blessed in this area to have Hmong, strong Hmong community up in the La Crosse area. They're actually, it's kind of a little bit of a long drive for them, but they're really more than happy to come down, and we'll have anywhere from like 5 to 12 Hmong 2 to 3 days a week. They're really flexible, so usually during the middle of the season we kind of just have a set schedule of about 7 to 8, and they come in 3 days a week, and they do 90+% of our weeding. They're really proficient pickers of peppers and tomatoes, and so yeah, super. There they are right there, weeding our carrots in that photograph. So they're amazing. And so that also helps. So if we didn't have them, we'd need even more people. So
Sure.
yeah.
Would you be able? Could you tell us a little bit about? I guess we could start. We talked a little bit about cover crops. Can you tell us about what your cover cropping regimen is related to potatoes and carrots? Like, so, what are you doing the year before and in the year of production for those crops?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. And unfortunately, we don't have. We're still trying to implement a lot of systems, so we don't have anything that's cut and dry. But we have a number of cover crop seeds that are that we like to use a lot, and that would be oats and peas, vetch, hairy vetch, and we've tried soybeans once in a while if we have them around, and rye. Although I'm using rye less and less. I like rye, winter rye, excuse me, but it's it's got to be the right time, because it's really hard. It's a lot of carbon to work in and stuff, so we don't really like to. I don't use that as much anymore. But oats and peas and hairy vetch are my main cover crops, and I also do. In the middle of summer, I'll put in buckwheat, which I really like. A lot of people kind of raise their eyebrows at it because it is hard to control. It's like if it just rained 2 inches and it's flowering, about to go to seed, you just need to go out there and do something, and maybe you can't, and that's why people don't like it. It's really it can get out of control in a hurry. So for something like carrots, we would put. If we were doing spring carrots, we'd have oats and peas in the fall, and that would winter kill. We'd probably plant like mid-August, so get a nice stand, and that would winter kill. And I don't have a picture of it, but we'll actually, a few slides back, maybe I don't know if I can move these or not. Is that me moving them now? Okay. You could see we throw our beds up here. There we are. Yeah, so in the middle of summer, if we have a little lull, whether we have a lull or not, we will, for like early seeded crops, we'll throw beds like this with what some people would call lister plow or bed the bed plow, and then we'll drag the grain drill right over that and plant oats and peas, and then that'll come up and it'll winter kill, and then we'll be ready to shape immediately. And there's a shaper. We use a rotavator with just a poly press pan behind it. So, and then we don't plant a ton of spring carrots, but so like our main fall crop, that field will get probably oats and peas planted in the spring, or maybe would have hairy vetch in it. Although carrots don't need a ton of nitrogen. We really like the vetch for the nitrogen fixing component, and we try to get hairy vetch down for oats and peas, also ahead of potatoes as well. So that's what's worked good for us.
Okay. So there are obviously a lot of raised beds going on. Have you grown on flat ground and decided that raised beds just work better for you, or have you always done it that way? Maybe tell us a little bit about how you got. And the reason why I ask is, I've used raised beds for the whole time that I've been doing this, and now I'm deciding to go and just try to do it on flat ground. And I'm wondering, I mean, I know the benefits of raised beds, increased warming in the springtime, runoff from water and all that. But I guess I'm does it make sense? Should I be looking to go back towards that system, as I increase in size, or does it, are there plenty of people doing it on flat ground just as well?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. We did, obviously, we used to do all of our farming on flat ground. We didn't know any better, and had any exposure really when we were younger, and so this wasn't a big vegetable growing region around us, so we didn't have any neighbors to look at or anything, but at the time anyway. And so, but the rate we at one point when our farm was scaling up a lot, our parents were still in full swing dairy farming, so they were using every bit of their land for cattle feed and grazing and stuff. So we farmed a lot in the valley, and it was quite wet. It's still quite wet down there. And so we raised beds it was just absolutely necessary to have them in order to get, a dry surface to plant on.
Sure.
And we went through a lot of floods, so that was, but, the other reason that we do some kind of bed, and it doesn't have to necessarily be really tall, but like this tool in this picture here, although it's not doing a very good job in this picture, but it strikes a bed off flat, and that gives us a level surface that's like the same on every bed that we can work with, and that's really key for if you're going to do a multi-row cropping. That's really key to have that for ideally for cultivation, because then all your little seedlings, maybe we can get back to that basket weeding picture, all the little seedlings come up on the same row, the same level, and the basket weeder or other cultivation tools will, if you're just trying to go real shallow, we'll be able to we'll all be touching it about the same amount on the bed. Now, of course, nothing's ever perfect, but when we used to do just flat ground and try to basket, inevitably, we didn't have it striked off just right. Like one side of the basket would be really deep and burying plants in order to get the other side just that half inch or so deep that we wanted. So it makes cultivation a little more challenging, but it is an extra set of tools, and it's probably if you're starting out, probably like better to just maybe plant stuff a little wider apart and allow yourself more room to work on, like maybe a simpler, like just 2-row system, like old-fashioned 2-row system or something, that a lot of tools are set up for.
Sure.
So that's an option anyway. The farm I worked at, Gardens of Egan in Minnesota, was, a very productive farm, unbelievably productive farm, and they did about 70 acres, all old-fashioned, 1 or 2 row, everything. So, and all flat, no raised beds. So, it is possible to do it that way as well. Yeah.
Good. That's good to know. So I saw a question about fertility in there, and that's probably on all of our minds. One of the questions was asking what you use for fertility in potato and carrots, and whether or not you side dress as well. And that kind of draws into my question too about compost and whether or not a good quality compost is enough of a fertilizer to carry these crops through.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, starting out, it's always good to keep it simple, and I guess that goes for any time really. But for us, for years and years, we did very little for the way of fertility. We just didn't have like the resources to do what we wanted to do. We always put down some type of starter. For a long time, it was just pelletized chicken or turkey manure. We put starter because our planters, we've always had planters with fertilizer boxes on them, or dribble it down by hand or whatever. But and then the last few years, we've been trying to run a little bit tighter ship. We used to plant a lot more acres actually, and we're trying to get the same production off of fewer acres now. So we lately we have been, well, something I'll back up. Something we've always done is tested our soil. We've done that for years, and it's really good to get your soil tested. And the only rule of thumb that I've heard is to just try to use the same testing place every time, because I guess from the way I understand it, most soil tests don't reflect exact amounts in your soil, but if you use the same testing agency, you'll be able to gauge which direction things are moving. So
sure.
So that's one thing. But so yeah, we get them tested. We just have Midwest BioAg do it. I guess we gather our own samples now. They used to have a guy that came out and did that, but we just gather our own samples and we send them to Midwest BioAg, and I think they have a lab in Nebraska or something. And yeah, we test everything, and now actually, and this is my brother's area is the certification, but I know for certain types of fertilizer applications now you have to test and show that you need it before you're allowed to apply it for organic certification. But so we test lots of different fields every year, and then we kind of see what they're lacking in, and we will actually buy some, albeit very expensive, custom blends from Midwest BioAg. Try not to do that every year, but when necessary, and then also some more general blends, like we have like an 0110 and an 0050, which is just really high in potassium, which and again, this really varies depending on your soil. That's why I can't stress the soil test enough. But for us, with potatoes, we find that adding extra potassium, that's side dressed mid-season, like in July sometime, before the end of July for sure. And at that point, we usually will put down a little extra composted chicken manure or something, try to get a little more nitrogen. Potatoes really like nitrogen, and they like it. They don't like it too late, but like some with starter, and then some when you're first planting, and then some sometime in like mid-July area, and so that pretty well covers the potatoes. Oh, we did, yeah. So we put then we have this general. I'm not sure what it's just it's a micronutrients mix. It has boron, zinc, and things like that. We've always added a little boron to our potatoes because some fields were real susceptible to hollow heart, and that's supposed to help. But so yeah, getting your soil tested and trying to get your soil balanced. That's Midwest BioAg's big thing, and if you can decide if you want to latch onto some philosophy or another and go with it. I guess I feel good about that philosophy. So we are trying to get our soil balanced and we feel like we've seen good results, especially on this field. The picture here where I'm throwing up beds is some of the nicest soil on our farm, and it's very black and loose, and everything's great. But a lot of fields are quite clay, and we've really turned some clay fields around with enough calcium. We spread gypsum and lime, and we've even got some high calcium lime, and things like calcium take so long to break down and receive that uptake. So kind of keeping up with that. If you need it, you can spread a little lime in the fall or gypsum in the fall every year, every other year or something, and sort of kind of have those granules always sort of coming available. And there are more soluble calciums available too, like Calphos. I think can be absorbed the same year, I think, and that's something we'll put down with like tomatoes or something, tomatoes or peppers. But and for carrots, carrots don't like a ton of nitrogen, so we're not as concerned about the nitrogen there. But see, I made some notes here. Yeah, they do, however, like phosphorus and potassium, and they get we use Sustain, which is very expensive, but it's a very deluxe, very, very nice product. It's out of Cannon Falls, Minnesota. It's called Sustain. It's composted turkey manure, but unlike composted chicken manure and poultry manure you probably buy, it doesn't smell. I don't know. Is anyone familiar with the Sustain product?
Yeah, I've used that in the past.
Okay.
I think a 524 is what we've used in the past.
Yeah. Yep, and that's what we put down too. We put down usually once the carrots are up about the 5 or 6 leaf stage, we'll put down some 564, and we've been using, and they will also get this Veggies Plus, which is a Midwest BioAg product. It's kind of a generic blend they sell for vegetable producers, and unfortunately I don't have the analysis on that, but it has a lot of different micronutrients in it, and high on the P and K, for which a lot of vegetables like her. So that's what we're doing. As I was saying, as we get more organized and have more time to fine tune things, I know some farms have success with liquid fertilizer for carrots and potatoes. We don't really have the capacity to apply that right now. We do have the tools, but we haven't ever gotten around to it. But it would be nice.
What type of irrigation system are you guys using now? And do you do anything special to get carrots to germinate, or do you just depend on the rain?
Yeah, so I have a picture of that here somewhere. See if I can find it. Carrot, there it is. Yeah, I like this picture because it really stresses how important water is after seeding. As you can see, the crew is, one guy is seeding and another crew is laying out solid, irrigation pipe right afterwards. So moisture right away after seeding is really helpful, and we're really spoiled now. We put in a very expensive well and underground irrigation system 2 summers ago now, in the middle of the drought, we knew we had been needing to do it for years. I actually, before the drought even started in the winter, I talked to a couple well drillers and got quotes, and then we're like, oh my God, that's too much money, and then we ended up doing it anyway because it was the middle of the drought, and he still had time, so I was like, well, guess it's now or never. And we actually had water online in time to germinate carrots that right in the drought year. Planted them 2 weeks late, but it was fine. So
that looks
but
like,
yeah, that's really helpful. Sorry, go ahead.
That looks like pretty good soil for carrot production. It looks maybe kind of light and loose.
Yes. Yep. It is a clay soil, and again, too, back to raised beds real briefly and drainage. It is helpful to know, and maybe you already know this too, like kind of what your substratum is and what kind of how your soil. What it's called a base, and so we have relatively shallow topsoils on our farm with, the clayier areas being maybe 4 inches of topsoil, and then like a field like this having as much as maybe 12, only 12 or 14 inches. And it is a clay loam, but it there's a mix. There's some silt loam and clay loam, and it also has a clay base. And I dug all the underground water lines in, so I got to see a lot of stuff. But clay base does not drain very well. We have some fields that are right on top of the ridge that are quite level, and the water will just sit there for days until it evaporates. So drainage is a huge problem for us. So even after moving out of the valley, the raised bed still really makes sense.
So in this picture, this system is just set up to get the carrots to germinate, and then it's taken out of the field so that you can cultivate, or how does that system work?
Yep. It's the solid set aluminum pipe. Has we have little sprinklers on it, and it to germinate, and then and then you have to move it all the time. I mean, that's kind of the aggravating thing about irrigation in general.
Sure.
It's always in the way, but it's.
Do you use a similar setup for your potatoes?
We do, and we went years without irrigating ever. We never had capacity to irrigate until maybe a few years ago. So capacity to irrigate's like ideal, and in some cases essential, especially getting fall carrots to germinate, because that's right in July, right during the drought. We get a drought in July every year, whether it's a drought year or not. So it can be really challenging to get fall roots seeded and germinated. But potatoes we use overhead as well, and I've been doing some experimenting with drip. I know there's some big farms that are really going crazy with drip, and they just use a really simple tool, like a plastic mulch layer that
Sure.
where you can see more mature carrots getting overhead. But you could do drip too. So.
So in those fields that hold water, are you tiling them as well?
We're not. I should think about that though. We're not. I mean, that's another expense, and we're just dealing with it. It's a little frustrating, but it's kind of work with what you got, So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe I could switch gears a little bit and talk about. I mean, you've obviously gotten to a much larger scale. So one of the things that I'm curious about is, how much I can do on my own, what's reasonable. Can you talk a little bit about like the progression that you made from the small, starting out with your brother and just growing on an acre or so, and maybe how long it took you to get to where you're at now, and some of the things that you had to do along the way to get there.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, yeah, I guess I've kind of, one of my big passions has always been equipment. So scaling up to be able to afford more equipment has always been important to me, which is not, it's kind of like, that's not really what farming's about, but then for me it kind of is. But also, I mean, this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but yeah, so, when we were little kids, the first year we planted the potatoes by hand, and we hilled them with like a rake and a hoe. I mean, it was very, very basic. It was all stuff that was just laying around. We didn't buy or rent or borrow anything, and then the next year we did already. My mom bought us a little tractor to use. She likes researching things and then buying it. So that was kind of her thing. And then she got us that, and also called around to some neighbors and found us a one-row potato planter to borrow, and that was a 140, so it was a little more modern farmall than what you had pictured, and we were able to pull the potato planter and hill at that point, and also we ended up borrowing a one-row potato digger later on that fall, which we were able to do all that with that small tractor, and then the next year after that we found used one-row equipment to buy for our own, to own, and we pretty much used the one-row for another year or two. I'm kind of always updating. That's sort of another disease of mine. But so we did end up getting a two-row pretty quickly, and then a four-row, because actually by the late 90s the potato industry collapsed in central Wisconsin, so there was just this plethora of like pretty good used four-row equipment, which is pretty big, available for really cheap. So I ended up getting my first four-row planter for a couple $100, and then it was like we never went back, But so to get back to your question, as far as managing, I'm trying to remember. I mean, it's different when you're like 11 or 12 years old, but
yeah, I guess maybe another way to frame the question is like if you were to go back and start over again. I know you wouldn't do it without the equipment that you know how to use now, but just kind of like if you were in my position, how would you gauge what you thought you might be able to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. That really, I thought about that for a while, and yeah, I know I have written down here. What are your other expectations, and do you have other things that are going to take you away from the farm that So it's like, those are like, I'm like, what can I tell them? But really,
sure.
I think that if you can, I know that hilling and cultivating, if you can kind of get that worked out mechanically for that little tractor you have, I think that I don't think that an acre would be unreasonable. That is a lot of potatoes. I would say somewhere between a half acre and an acre would be a pretty reasonable goal for that. And carrots, are pretty quick and easy to plant and everything. They're also can be quite labor intensive to dig and top and everything, as I'm sure you know. So that I think I had maybe kind of figured in my head that maybe you'd be able to like handle maybe a half an acre. No, not a half, like a tenth of an acre of carrots or something. Okay. Somewhere around there. Maybe a little more. I mean, even at our scale, we only grow about an acre of carrots in the fall, and that's a lot of carrots. That's like ends up being like 40,000 pounds. So
sure.
So maybe size your carrots to your market a little bit. Carrot planting.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. That's great advice, and you know, a lot of it it ties into just what you said, what your expectations are for, and what else is pulling on you,
Sure.
in terms of what else needs to be done.
Sure. Sure.
So within those two, I think potatoes, it sounds like, you know, at least for people starting out, some of the big equipment things would be at least the ability to hill those potatoes, and potentially a way to either put them in the ground or get them out. How about with carrots? So do you use the basket weeder with the carrots? And if so, what additional things do you use for cultivation? And if not, what do you use?
Yeah. I didn't provide a photograph of our cultivator that we really like on carrots because it's just really quite expensive and not all that available. But yeah, the basket works really great. Yeah, the carrots usually get the basket first. Well, actually, first we flame, and I know you mentioned you had the capacity to flame, and a timely flaming is really, really important on direct seeded crops like that come up slowly, like carrots and parsnips and things like that. So yeah, first we'll flame, and then the carrots will spike through, and they'll usually be just a little bit ahead of the weeds, just enough, and then we go through and basket, and then we have this other tool that's pretty basic. It's basic in the sense that it has like some side knives and some little discs that I'm able to go really close. We get within probably 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of either side of the carrot row with this. It's a kind of a precision tool, and I could email you a picture of that at some point. But
sure.
I sold the parts, to someone in your area to make one. So, so that, and then a couple of hand weedings, and that usually does it. So,
okay.
And ideally too, basketing, the field. Yeah, back to that was another question. Back to field prep a little bit. If you can get your beds or flat ground, whatever you're planting on, worked a few times, get a few weed flushes worked out. That's really helpful. And that same goes for potatoes. We don't try to compete with the Central Sand boys. They're like out there in like April 1st or something planting potatoes, but they have all that sand, so and by Central Sand I mean Wisconsin, up around Stevens Point and Engel. And they have to. Their fall comes quite early. So, but if you can, we plant potatoes like mid to late May, and even into June sometimes, like this year, reluctantly, and so there's ample time to really. We'll work those fields 2 or 3 times, just like a field cultivator, and get some weed flushes out, and that really helps. The potatoes usually can come up ahead of time and ahead of the weeds a little bit, and then we'll just go through with just about anything you can find that would just disturb the dirt around the potatoes and get rid of those little weeds. I always say with cultivation, early and often, and so tine weeders are great. They're not available for everyone. They're expensive, but also, we have a finger weeder made by Budding. I don't know if anybody knows what those are. They're also great, but not very cheap. And we actually 1 row 6 acres of potatoes with the Budding finger weeder. It takes a while, but it's worth it. And then or we'll go through, or you could just go through with your tractor. You have some sweeps and stuff on there. I don't know if you're going to have the capacity to switch back and forth, but if you can set that 1 row up real narrow, and just try to 1 row your potatoes few times. That'll save you some hand pulling.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of the process there, and with the potatoes too, you know, if you can get some weed flushes out before you plant, and then hit them with the one row very timely a couple of times, you're mainly going to end up with weeds right in with the potatoes, and then you can then if you can get some discs and hill them a time or two, you know, then kind of throw a little soil across, and we end up hand weeding our potatoes once every year, and that's usually enough because they are a row crop. They're quite hardy. I mean, people kind of hold their breath when I go through the field, but it's like I'm willing to be fairly aggressive with them, and they seem to bounce back pretty good. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. How about post-harvest handling of carrots and potatoes? How do you? You're obviously growing a lot, so they've got to be stored. How are you guys storing them in dirty, or do they get washed? Does everything get washed and then stored, or how does that work for you?
Everything gets stored dirty, and I wouldn't recommend washing anything before storage. It's nice to wash the dirt off fresh and then ship it. Then it kind of has nice sheen. They're more likely to dry out if they're washed and then stored. And in this picture here, you can see these bins. We don't use these plywood ones anymore, but you know, they were really cheap, so we used them for a while. But they don't hold up real well. They're designed for something else. But at any rate, we just used basically a 20 bushel orchard bin like that. All of our big harvests, all of our big storage crops, all go into 20 bushel bins like this. I think we filled almost 300 bins last year, and then they get. Let's see if I can find that picture. Oh, maybe I can only go backwards now. So I'll go backwards. There's planting. Whoops. This is a 4-row planter made in Norway, and again, it was very inexpensive at one time, so we upgraded. And you can see some green harvest totes we also use. So if we're doing a smaller harvest, they can just get stored in that. Or if it's a crop we don't grow very much of, maybe we'll store it exclusively in those. But go back here to it shows. Picture here of our storage. So there you can see the bins stacked inside the cooler. Obviously this requires forklifts and concrete and things, which we didn't have for years. We started out, we reused the bags the seed came in. We filled those back up and threw the potatoes we did have. So yeah, my parents did have. They were going to make yogurt at one time, so they built this whole yogurt factory, and that had a cooler in it that wasn't finished, and our dad helped us finish that up. So that was our starter cooler. It was, I have to say, in a very inconvenient location, and we spent a lot of time hauling, sacks of potatoes through all these rooms and up over ledges and stuff. But at any rate, it gets you going. So, and I think we went to grocery stores too, and just got random boxes from behind the store for a while too. So very, very simple way to start. But they like it. Potatoes like it not super cold, but cool enough to prevent sprouting. So when you first bring them in, they really only need to be cooled down to about 45 or 50 degrees and about 90% humidity. And potatoes breathe a lot, so they do like some outdoor air brought in periodically. Probably on a small scale, just open the door is enough, so it's not something you really need to worry about. But they like it moist, and then kind of as the season progresses, or as the storage season progresses, like throughout December, we'll turn it down slowly to around 38, bottoming out around 38 degrees. Organically, I think there are some organic like sprout inhibitors, but we largely take care of the sprouting problem with chilling them really cold, and sometimes we'll go down to 34 degrees towards the spring to really keep them from sprouting, but it's really not good
that
for
won't
them.
Cause any...
I'm sorry.
That won't cause injury?
It won't injure them, other than the fact that they become, your starches start turning into sugars, and so they become sweet. And our customers have just kind of like come to expect it. I don't know if a lot of people probably don't even ever notice, and I guess the ones that do don't mind, but it's not an ideal situation, and restaurants really do complain because, especially with something like a russet that has a lot of starch and then produces a lot of sugar, and then those burn because they largely buy potatoes for chipping or American fries or what, some kind of like scramble thing, and so that doesn't work out so well for their breakfast menu. But restaurants haven't been a huge market for us, and they, so we're just not gonna we're not gonna cater to that March restaurant market. So, that.
Sure.
But that's a really big issue too. Starting out, like how to have enough different types of storage, and I'll be perfectly honest. Right there in this picture, you're looking at. That's everything in our cooler. We have potatoes are in the white bins because of the heaviest, and carrots are all the way to the far right, and we have parsnips and beets on the left and center, and cabbage is in there. So right now we compromise. We've set our cooler at about 36, 37 degrees, which is way too warm for carrots and virtually every other root crop that we grow. But we don't really have an adequate alternative at this point in time. It's something we would really like to do. So I wouldn't get too discouraged. I know some people, they do have a storage area. You can do things, just something really simple like a sheet of plastic, adhere some aluminum channel for like a greenhouse and a wiggle wire, and have like a movable curtain type thing, and you could get a couple slightly different temperatures in a room sometimes that way, but because carrots really like it. They like it cold and wet. They don't like water right on them, but they like 95, 98, 100% humidity and 32 degrees, which is a really, really difficult, challenging storage condition to create. But just to start out with what's ideal, and then to kind of find out what how close you can come to that, because when you get to those temperatures with that kind of humidity, you get a lot of freezing up issues if you are going to have like an actual cooler with fans and refrigeration. Obviously at 32 degrees water starts freezing, so you really need to have electronic defrost. So this is just kind of looking down the road if you are going to be buying refrigeration equipment and stuff, and if you can afford it, to get the electronic defrost cycle, because it will allow you to go colder if you desire. So and again,
I think what I'm hoping to do is to purchase a regular, and you can tell me if you've had any experience with the CoolBot or not, but my intention is to purchase a walk-in cooler for the to get closer to the 30, 34, 35 degree temperatures, and then to build an additional 2x4 framed lined with insulation unit, and then run a CoolBot there to try and keep that temperature for the potatoes at the the 45 to 50 degree temperature.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. I know I've never had a cool bud. I've threatened to buy one a couple times, but I don't. They don't. They sound like a great option. I know a number of small producers that have them, and just I've never heard anything bad about them. So other they don't go real cool, which you know, but they're great. I think they're great. Yeah. So
Sure.
I feel good about that.
So one of the last questions that I had for you was about marketing strategies. I know you're doing the CSA, and then I assume a lot of this stuff goes out into the wholesale market. Can you talk a little bit about how I know, and maybe that's not part of what you handle in the operation, but maybe at percentages of which crops go where, and maybe a little bit about the pricing that you do for those crops on a wholesale and a retail level, if you're doing retail sales too.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, I wanted to back up real quick. I think most people know this, but I have heard of some established outfits still making this mistake. But carrots are very ethylene sensitive, so you would not want to store them with ethylene producers. Like something that always comes to mind in the fall is apples. People, picking a bushel of apples from a wild tree or whatever, and then they go in the cooler with everything else. So just to throw that out there, they'll get very bitter carrots if they're exposed to ethylene for a very short period of time, and it could be as little as like overnight. So really want to keep those away from tomatoes or other ethylene producers if you have carrots in storage in the summer or whatever. So, but yeah, back to marketing. No, marketing definitely is not my area, but more because I don't like doing it. But I could tell you what we have done, and that is. Basically when we started out, we just went to the farmers market in Madison, Wisconsin, and I don't know, we make like $70 on a Saturday or something. So it was just pretty low key, and then basically, I guess as far as like getting into markets, we would leave samples at different establishments and just ask people, if they had a use for it. And inevitably you get some people that do and have use for your product, especially if it looks nice. If you want to get into obviously farmers market, we take our best stuff to farmers market. Having that, being behind your stand selling stuff, having that perfect image is really helps grow your customer base. And same thing too, really, for us, for like when we sell to co-ops, which is considered wholesale. I call it retail, but it's not really. But at any rate, those accounts we really try to keep. They often they like stuff that looks really good, so they can sell. Everybody does, really. So I don't know really where I'm going with that, but consistent quality. It's kind of silly thing to say. I know probably everyone's heard it, but we're really going for that wow effect. Whenever a buyer or somebody or a customer opens up a box that they get from us, we want them to go, wow, this is nice stuff. It doesn't really sound like marketing, but that's kind of like having consistent quality which is difficult to do on a small scale because you don't have a lot of product to draw from, so it can just it can be challenging, and it is for us too still, frankly. But so keeping the quality good, and what else do we? And so CSA is not something I would have ever tackled by myself. Was one reason I was really excited to bring on Mike as a partner, and something. My brother's wife helped start, and then Mike really helped get going too. And so that's a lot of paperwork and marketing and keeping up with several different individual customers opposed to wholesale, which is usually one or two bigger customers. So but I don't know, are you thinking of doing a CSA at all, or not at this point?
No, actually, I'm trying to stay as far away from the CSA model as I can, for better or worse. And mostly because I've learned over the years that particular, just like you say, the amount of work that goes into managing each individual customer is more than I want to deal with. A Saturday or a Wednesday market where I've got maybe hopefully 100 people coming and talking to me for a couple minutes it's okay, but the idea of managing a relationship over the course of 4 or 5 months each year, it can be a little taxing sometimes.
Intimidating, yeah. I completely understand.
The thing that I will miss the most is having access to that capital early on. I mean, that's obviously the biggest advantage of doing that. And I've thought about it a lot. I don't know that it'll fit with the rest of my farming personality, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I completely understand. And that's why Mike does our CSA program. But
yeah, right.
But yeah, and otherwise, yeah, most of our other accounts, where a lot of our co-ops we got into by just, like I was saying, leaving them with samples and telling them what we had, and kind of going from there. That's really about all we did. And have it, some things, little things that you can do is, depending on your volume, but have a professional availability, even if it's short. Maybe if there's only a few things available. Something that's easy for produce manager to understand, case sizes with prices and things like that are helpful. Yeah. I guess if you had something specific, I might be able to tell you what we do. I'm kind of falling a little short on marketing.
No, that's okay. I guess you've answered most of the questions that I had. I think I don't want to. I feel like I'm being greedy just having the ability to talk to you while everyone listens. I see people have questions there on the side that look like good questions. And one of them that I saw, and I didn't ask you about this, so I'll just make this my final question to you about just about pest control, not necessarily weeds, but other insect pests or disease problems that you've faced, and maybe a little bit about how you dealt with them. Someone asked specifically about leafhoppers, so if that's a problem for you, maybe talk about how you deal with that, and then other pests as well.
Sure. Yeah. We also didn't talk about yield, but I could go over that briefly at the end of my pest control here. And we're really fortunate not to have leaf hoppers, but I know we have them, but not at a damaging level whatsoever. So carrots, we don't really have any pests. I see someone else talking about root maggots and stuff, and though those are we have a few root worm, or some type of worm that's eating our carrots, and the best thing I know about that is just really long rotation. And I made some other notes. What was there's some other I think there are people experimenting with biofumigants and things like mustard and rapeseed and stuff for nematodes, which are a worm that can attack carrots and potatoes. So that's something you could try. But We really, for carrots and potatoes, we don't have very much for pests other than potatoes. We do have Colorado potato beetle. I don't know anyone that doesn't. And we really get around Colorado potato beetle by planting late. That's why we plant in mid to late May. Because New Orleans and Yukon Golds will still often get a few, but it's they come out. Colorado potato beetle comes out real early, and usually by the time our potatoes come up, and ideally our potatoes are breaking through the ground in first or second week in June, they're mainly gone. They're mainly a May pest, and that's why these big farms that plant really early, they have to spray like crazy to keep ahead of the potato beetles. So, and when we do have to deal with them, we have sprayed and trussed, and that is very effective. But from what I know, they become potato beetles can become somewhat immune to that pesticide. So we really try to make it not an every year thing. Really we don't have to spray hardly at all for those crops. So, and I also see someone mentioned something that I forgot about storage, and that is that to maintain that higher humidity in things like carrots, you wouldn't want to do this with a potato, but things like carrots and beets, you can get a vented plastic bag or liner. We just use pallet covers, and we put our own holes in them in a few places, and put your dirty crop right into that, and that will help an incredible amount towards keeping those moist and crisp. And then I was going to just go over yields. Our yields have gone from have been all over the board, from pathetic to quite nice and somewhere in between. So, but generally speaking, we're getting around 6 times what we plant. That's kind of how I like to look at it. We plant about 2,000 pounds of seed per acre at about an 8-inch. We space them at about 8 to 10 inches, the potato pieces, and we usually get around 6 to 10 times roughly. The way yield's calculated in the potato industry and virtually every other industry is hundredweight, and we're getting about 25 to 30 hundredweight ideally if things are going really well. That's been some of our best yields. Conventional russet growers that are growing for French fries and chippers for Frito-Lay, they're getting in that 40 hundredweight, which is around 40,000 pounds to the acre. So we're pretty happy if we can do about half that or a little better. So
sure.
Yeah, and carrots too. Conventional yields are in that anywhere from 15 to 20 on up to 30,000 pounds, really depending on variety and what all you're growing, if they're dicers or fresh market. And we're actually right up there. For whatever reason, we have really excellent carrot yield. I think we're getting over 30,000 pounds off an acre for carrots. So those should yield pretty good for you.
Cool. Well, it looks like there's about 10 minutes left. I am, I'm sure, willing to let you answer some of those other questions if there are others that folks have.
Sure. Yeah, I see one that reminded me. I think it was something you had asked too, and I didn't answer yet. What target wholesale or retail price per pound for potatoes, and I'll add in carrots, and we we wholesale, as a general rule, we wholesale almost all of our root crops for at least $1 a pound. Wholesale. Things like parsnips are a little higher value because if anyone's growing parsnips, they know how finicky they are to produce and handle and everything. So, but as a general rule, we're at around $1 a pound, or $1 to $1.25 a pound. Yes, yeah. When we're selling direct, still considered wholesale, but when we sell direct to like a co-op or a grocery store, we get a little more. I think that's more like $1.15 or $1.20 something a pound for carrots, and potatoes. I think they're still in that $1 a pound range. So that's really what we're shooting for there. And we sell seconds potatoes for I think we sell a lot of different seconds root crops, and for that like 30 to 60 cent a pound range, depending on what it is and everything. So.
Okay. Luke asked what kind of equipment I'd be interested in buying now that we've had the conversation, and I certainly the thing that's on my mind right now is getting some type of hilling disc to go along with whichever tractor will work for it. I have hilled potatoes a lot in the past, and I mean, it's amazing what you can bring through the season with just a couple of just doing hilling on the potatoes alone. So that would probably be my first thing, first inclination.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And hilling discs too. I just had another. So that's kind of one of my little off-season things I do for entertainment, I guess. And occasionally I make a little bit of money, but I help people source equipment and find equipment. I can't help myself from buying a few trailer loads every year, so then I have to get rid of it. So the hilling discs, probably many people are familiar with like Agri Supply. They sell this huge line of Chinese cultivation tools and other stuff. Basic things like they have the old fashioned just sweep and spring loaded shovel that International used to make, and they also sell the old International wedge bolt clamp, and I have found their quality to be very poor. They also sell disc killers, and that they do sell a nice, like a really tall stem, just inexpensive, easy to use disc killer. Again, I found the quality not be super great, but on a small scale, I might recommend that. Otherwise, the ones I really like are Buffalo. They obviously make the big row crop equipment, but you can buy just their disc killers from them, and I've had really good luck with those. So, and the nice thing about those, they came out with a newer model that has a really goofy stem on it that's all custom for their things, but the older ones have an 1.1" round stock, which is exactly what you need for a standard Farmall wedge bolt clamp. It has an 1.1" round hole in it, so
okay,
very compatible.
That's good to know. Sure.
So, and I welcome. I just let to anyone who's listening, or Jason, I welcome people to, if they're looking for something, to let me know. I might know where it is, or might be able to point you in the right direction. So if I can help out at all, yeah, definitely let me know. So, and I do always have some items on hand too that I'm selling, so that I don't really have advertised in any way. I don't have a website or anything, so it's sort of kind of by word of mouth. I have a few different producers that know that, and they usually email me every year to see what I have or to let me know what they're looking for. And so, if anyone else wants to make an inquiry, let me know. So.
Sure, I'll certainly send you a list of the things that I'm looking for. It's always good to have extra eyes out there, especially experienced eyes looking for you.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So it looks like there's a question about if I would host be a practical farmers. If I would host a field day on our farm, on my farm, and yeah, I would be happy to do that. I love talking about equipment. Sounds like a blast. So yeah.
I gotta say, Noah, that there, at least the other growers that I interact with, equipment's a huge deal, and a lot of us, most of us aren't minded in that way, if you will. So seeing equipment work or having someone explain how something is supposed to work is a real useful thing. There just aren't. To me, it seems like there are a lot of, I guess, the quote-unquote old-timers have a lot more experience with this. There are a lot fewer of us in this generation that have a real practical understanding of what this equipment is supposed to do and how best to use it.
Yeah, I could definitely second that, and I got a lot of my experience from making tons of really, less than ideal purchases and being stuck with pieces of equipment that I didn't realize nobody wanted until I had it, and so yeah, you do get to learn a lot, and growing potatoes and different vegetables in lots of different soils over the years, and finding out what tools really going to work for you. Yeah, and I wish that is something I did wish I had someone that could have sort of given me a heads up on a few tools earlier on. So yeah, that's sure.
Someone had asked earlier about your well. How deep of a well did you have to put in?
Well, we're on the ridge, so most just household wells in our area are at 350 feet, and we went to 500 really to have the capacity, which is really by central sands and irrigated regions. It's a teensy well. It has a capacity of about 80 gallons per minute. Capacity is all relative depending on how far you're pushing it and pressure and everything else. But I guess we get about between 60 and 70 gallons per minute out of it under pressure, and open discharge it to just fill a tank or something is about 80, and that cost about $45,000. So to give you an idea of what well drillers are charging in our area.
Sure.
That was everything. The shaft. It's an 8-inch shaft, and that was about $25,000, and then another $20,000 for the pump and controller and everything. So.
Okay. It looks like Luke has a question on there that looks like a good one, not one that I would have thought of. But it's asking about the profit trends of Midwest vegetable farming and whether or not you think the margins are holding, shrinking, or expanding, and maybe what the top areas you see farmers need to focus on to maintain those margins.
Yeah, boy. That's lots of great questions. Yeah, boy. I feel like boy, that's a tough one to answer. I feel like profit. I don't know. I feel like profit margins are. I don't know. We're in like this perpetual updating and expansion mode. So, I guess our profits have been getting a little better, but it's kind of all relative too, based on how organized and tooled up you are. Farms mature over time, and we're really still maturing quite a bit, and we can see a lot of growth potential as we develop more efficient systems, and just simple things like a labeled place that rakes, hose, and shovels get hung, brooms and dustpans in buildings, labeled trash and recycling, designated parking areas for machinery and and crew vehicles. Things like this really, allow you to do more with less management. So I guess it's not really answering the question, but let's see. But yeah, I feel like margins are holding. Generally speaking, prices are holding, and they are going up slightly each year to reflect a lot of costs that are going up too. So
sure.
Yeah, I don't know if that really was a helpful answer or not, but
well, I think it is. I mean, the profits are obviously what keep all of us going, and as long as those profits are there, people will continue to trend towards the field. So
yeah, I think if you can keep your operation if you can keep your operations simple and really add tools that you're going to you can implement right away and see an immediate payback. I mean, I think that was one of the downsides of being really equipment crazy for a long time, is I ended up buying a lot of tools I didn't need, and it tied up capital, and it was a big distraction too, getting lots of different old machines running and trying to build. I tried to build a lot of equipment for a while, and I don't know, I spent a lot of time doing things that weren't really related to making money. I thought it was, but so I guess I guess following your passion the whole time, so that's important too. But so yeah, I think focus is the key word there.
Yeah.
I'm not a good focuser. I never have been. Graduated, like a D average, so it's like I wasn't very able to focus on school or anything. But so yeah.
Great.
So yeah, to kind of answer Luke's question there about focus. Yeah. That's the key word.
This has been great. Thank you so much, Noah and Jason, for doing all this preparation and pulling together these photos. Thank you to, is it Mike, your business partner?
Yeah.
Thanks to Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, man, what a great service he did to help us with these photos.
Absolutely, yes, I agree.
And thank you very much for spending your time with us. And we're going to conclude for this evening, but join us next week and every week through March 11th for another new Farminar from Practical Farmers of Iowa. Thanks.